to African Teapot Podcast. My name is Exie and I'm your host. Journey with me through Africa's vast variety of culture, heritage, and discuss issues most African families face, both home and abroad. Make sure you add this podcast to your frequent podcast rotations, and don't forget to share and follow this podcast.
Hello guys, and thank you for tuning in for another episode on African Teapot. And this week's title is Christianity in the African Setting. And the proverb that I thought tied perfectly with this says, after a foolish deed comes remorse. I know you are asking, what has Christianity got to do with this proverb, right? Remorse and good deed. But when we get into our discourse, then you would understand why I thought this proverb ties perfectly with the title. And just quick information to pass out here. This topic was actually suggested by an amazing listener and supporter to the show, Ben Collins. He suggested this, and we talked about it for a bit when he suggested it. And I thought, you know what, it was a great topic, and I thought it suited for the time that I chose to do it, because we are starting off a new year. A lot of people are making New Year resolutions, like we covered in our last episode, and people like to take care of their spirituality, right? And being a Christian, and he who suggested it to me is Christian too, I thought, you know what, it ties perfectly for me to do this. So I am, again, this is a disclaimer. I'm not doing this as though I am a preacher or like a priest or anything, a biblical teacher or anything like that. I'm approaching this being a Christian, one, and second, I am African as well. So I kind of would be saying or talking about things that I believe affects me and affects people around me, if that kind of makes sense. Okay. All right. Having that taken care of, I just thought I should do a quick birthday shout out to Eric Awa. Hopefully you have an amazing birthday, darling. You get to experience the joys and the wonders that 2021 has got in store for you, right? Okay, let me just go ahead and get into our conversation.
Hi, Exie. This is Ben. I got another question for you. How do you think religion plays into our African identity and individualism, I guess? And is it ironic that although religion, especially with respect to the Christian faith, came from the outside, that Africa and Africans in general right now are one of the leading voices of Christianity? That's my question.
Okay guys, before I get into our discussion, I just thought to say sorry if I sound a little bit nasally. I'm recovering from a cold, and I promise guys it's a cold, but I do think I sound a little bit off, so I just thought I should get that out of the way, right? Okay, now talking about our topic. When I was doing research on this or studying on this, I came across certain things that I didn't know myself, and I thought I should put it out there. And some I did know, but I think our non-African listeners would not necessarily get it. So I thought I should just put that out there for us, so that it gives us a better understanding why we say the Westerners brought in Christianity and yet now we are practicing it more than they are, right? Okay, now let us look at it from this perspective, or not perspective, but these are some facts. These are just facts. One is Christianity is said to have been established in Northern Africa first, and it came from Jerusalem to Alexandria, and it was brought in by Mark the Evangelist. This was in between the late 1st century and early 2nd century. And then it spread later on to Ethiopia and other parts of Africa. And at the same time, we know that during colonial period, missionaries, there was a missionary, like missionaries came, they flocked into Africa, because Christianity at that time, permit me use the word, was weaponized to push the Western agenda and propaganda. So the missionaries came first, established contacts with the chiefs, the traditional rulers and and all of that, and then their governments came shortly after that to acquire those territories as their overseas territories, right? I would try to put in some websites and links that I used for this, just so that you can go and do further reading on it, right? But I thought I should just put that out there for our non-African listeners and let you know how old Christianity has been in this continent we are talking about. Like it's a very old, it's not something that just went to Africa or something like that. Now, since we know that the missionaries who brought in Christianity, who tried to spread it into those hidden parts of Africa and stuff, as history has it, when they brought this, most often it was forced on us, right? It's like, oh, you need to get baptized, or you need to give your life to Christ before you get whatever, or before whatever, right? And some people, it was just forced on them. Most often it was not a willing situation. So we have people who willingly accepted Christianity and those who did not. But what we are trying to say is, at that time, the Western countries were spearheading Christianity. They were the ones bringing this new way of worship to us, because we already had our own thing going on, but they brought this new way of belief to us. So now let's go to our current day Africa. So when I was talking to a lot of you on social media, I realized that there are some points that we all are making, and I realized that culture and Christianity is like one. It's like my identity. It's like I am African one and I am a Christian, and the way I worship, my culture has to do with it. You see, so it's like we can't separate them at this point. So if someone says, did Christianity influence culture and did culture influence Christianity, I think they're both right. So that was one fun thing that I tend to realize throughout the discussions I had with different people. So it made me summarize our discussions into some points, and I'm going to go ahead and just rush through those points, right? The first one is, before I get into the points, actually, one last thing that I want to say is that when we use the word Christianity in Africa, it's a blanket word. What do I mean by this? It means every denomination that believes in the Holy Trinity, that's God the Father, the Son, and Holy Spirit. They believe in God as our Savior. They believe in getting baptized. All of that, we consider them Christians. So Catholics are Christians, because when I came to the States, one of the questions that I got, and it was rather confusing to me, was, are you Christian or Catholic? And I thought, well, aren't they the same? Aren't they Christians? Because I come from families that are mixed. Some are Christians and some are, not Christians. Some are Presbyterian, some are Catholics, but we all pray together. We all consider ourselves Christians. So in Africa, the word Christian or Christianity is a blanket word for all these denominations, all these different churches, right? Okay, just thought I should put that out there. So one of the first reasons that I realized or came, summarized down to is Africa is the second largest continent in the world, with over 1 billion people in it. And approximately about half of those people, or 500 million people, are Christians. That is a huge, permit me use the word market, that is a huge market. That's a lot of followers for one religion in one continent. Hence, you're going to have that void. There is that void of spiritual leaders. That's why Africa is producing a lot of priests, a lot of pastors, a lot of spiritual leaders, as I'm saying, a lot of evangelists, prophets, prophetess are coming out in numbers. Different church denominations are coming out in their numbers. Like we would say in Cameroon, mushroom churches. They are everywhere because there is that void. People are looking. There are just a lot of Christians to provide that service for or to, right? Look at Nigeria. The number of prophets and spiritual leaders coming out of there and church is just at an alarming rate. And I thought that one thing too is the number of Christians that are on the continent by itself. Another point is most people are looking for quick answers, which in Christian words would be miracles. Another point is desperation for a different life, lack of jobs and economic growth, parents looking for ways to keep their youth busy and out of trouble, beliefs of spiritual evil and voodoo. So you'd be like, okay, let's now get into this in a more detailed form at least. What I mean, or what I'm trying to say is that if most pastors, most of these spiritual leaders, they are just not spiritual leaders alone. They are not using these churches as just, oh, I'm gaining more flock, right, for my fold. Oh, I'm just getting souls for heaven. It is also a source of their livelihood. It's a source of them feeding their families, right? So, and those who are going to the church as well are looking answers for their economic stagnancies or their economic difficulties. If I'm looking for a job, I've been looking at it for years, and physically I can't seem to do anything about it, then guess what? I'm going to try to concentrate on the spiritual side of it, if that kind of makes sense. That's what I'm talking about. It's like, because of the poverty, the financial troubles that the average African has, they would go into this business because there is a void for it. You have 500 million people who need places of worship, who need spiritual leaders. So someone who is trying to also look for livelihood, who went to pastoral, then now you're going to pastoral schools, or would suddenly say they have the calling, right? And they would open a church at a corner and have their own church family attending. And then the church family that is attending is also looking for financial answers. They are looking for jobs. They want another means of a livelihood. They want to change their struggle, their story. So they are also going there looking for that financial miracle, right? So desperation is pushing people to open up churches, to go to pastoral schools, or be spiritual leaders. And desperation is driving a lot of people to these churches because physically they can't break that cycle. So they have to spiritually try to break it. Now someone will ask, what is the cause of this? Our government is just incompetent half of the time. I mean, most of these people are educated, but they still live in poverty. They still live a very difficult life. So they need it to change, right? And Africans, we believe a lot in traditions. We build up. We don't want to break traditions. We are a very conservative culture. We try to preserve something for as long as we can. So at a young age, if you are growing in a Christian community and in a Christian family, they would introduce you to that and make it stick with you right from a young age, right? If your father can provide for you physically and financially or otherwise, they would want to take care of your spiritual life because they believe if you give to church, then you have a chance. Your spiritual life will not be so hard that your spiritual life is going to interfere with your physical and make your future different, which is a miracle, right? So if you look at it, is we can't stop because we have a tradition in it as well. If your father is a pastor or went to this church, you tend to do the same thing. Compared to the Western world where children are allowed to pick their ways of belief, oh, maybe I want to be an atheist, I don't believe in it or whatever. It's their choice. They are independent from their parents' choices. But that's not necessarily the case in Africa. Most Africans know what I mean. Like, you have to keep up that tradition. You know no other thing, right? When something is working in Africa, when something is positive and good, it is pushed onto you at a very young age. Christianity is not bad, so why are they going to keep it away from you? They're going to feed it to you to the point that you think that is the only option you got. You are exposed to other things later on in life, but as a child, you are exposed to what your parents, bring to you or expose you to. Okay, now we are also looking at the part where you feel like we have that instinct of survival. We are exposed to hardship and at a very young age. At a very young age, we are made aware of the difficulties that life has. We are not... Westerners shelter kids or shield kids from hardship so that they can have, as they call it, a normal life as a kid. So they shelter these children from the troubles. But in Africa, we are exposed to them at a young age so that you know right from wrong and so that you can start paving your way so that your future is not as difficult as what you're seeing, right? So from young, we are told that you should pray and not stop. You should not give up. You should keep on doing it, because God is going to answer those questions, because you're going to get an answer someday. So we keep at it. And that's why when you meet an African, we would pray, we would fast, right? We wouldn't miss that church service. We are into it. Like, it's who we are. It's part of our culture. You need to take care of your spiritual self. That is just an African thing. Every African will tell you, you need to choose where you belong. You can't just say you don't belong anywhere, right? So if you choose Christianity, you got to stick with it. You have to be unending in it. You can fall out, but guess what? You need to fall back in at the end of the day. You need to get up and keep going. So that also makes it in such a way that you don't have a lot of dwindlers away from it. They will tell you they're Christians. They may not be very strong in it, but they are Christians. Compared to Westerners who, the secular life is way more popular than the spiritual life. People don't think about their spiritual life. Most of them don't even believe the spiritual life is there, because at a young age, they are exposed to alternatives. At a young age, they are exposed to, oh, you can make a choice of your own. If you don't want to go, you don't want to go. But that is not the case with us Africans. And so I thought these points do generally cover why you tend to see, it tends to look like there are just a lot of Africans being Christian. One is the number. There are just a lot of people, right? But I thought these different reasons kind of summarize what everyone had to say on social media about the topic. And then someone said, but why do we pray so loudly? And why is it that the prophets are coming out? I'm like, think about it. If you have your competition is these old Orthodox churches, like if your competition is the Catholic Church, the Presbyterian Church, Methodist, Full Gospel, right? And you are trying to win flock for your fold, right? As we would say, you're trying to win more people to attend your church services. What would you do? You have these outlandish or eccentric things that you're doing. Maybe you have to promise miracles, right? Promise breakthroughs, promise a different life, promise alternatives to what people know. So you have like this miracle workers, you have people who are missionary workers, like they're televising it, showing it on TV, because you're trying to reach as many people as you can. Because one, like I said again, that's their way of income as well. And two, you are trying to take people who have been attending these old churches to come to yours. It's a competition. So you have business strategies in it, right? And when these things are going on back to back, they have to twist the different traditions of church to attract different people to their churches. With all of this, you have different kind of pastors, different kind of preachers, and different kind of followers in Africa. You would go to a church and the way they do things, they are totally different from the other church, because they have to be different. Because there are so many of them, and they have to be different to stand out, to attract new people, to attract people who are attracted to what they are selling. If that kind of makes sense. Hopefully it does. But I just thought, generally speaking, this covers why we worship the way we worship. One is that the poverty has a lot to do with it. Superstition has a lot to do with it. The government just being incompetent. They can't give you what you want. The shot at you having a life, the opportunities are just limited, right? And then our survival instinct kicks in. We got to survive. With all these problems, we still got to survive. We are hustling and pushing every day. The answers are not coming the way we want. We hang on to hope. The hope is this spiritual leader telling you that, well, if you fast and pray, if you pray so loud, if you attend church service 4 times a week, or whatever they promise you, you are going to get out of this illness that you don't have money to treat. You're going to get out of this financial burden, or whatever your problem is. We hang on to that hope because we just want something different. We just want to have a shot, right? So the desperation also plays a part in why we worship, or why Christianity has such a stronghold in Africa. Why? And it doesn't promise you evil. It doesn't say you have to do special sacrifices or anything like that to get it. You understand? All you need to do is believe. So it is attractive to us, considering most people don't have a lot to give anyways, right? It is a religion that is attractive to both the rich and the poor, right? Criminals and non-criminals, sinners and non-sinners. I mean, who wouldn't want that, right? So it has a strong hold on us. If anybody is allowed to be a Christian in a continent that a lot of people are wanting, a lot of people lack, then people will be drawn to that religion, right? And for these reasons, I think that's why Christianity is the way it is in Africa. And I don't think it's going to break anytime soon. I don't think so. But for the fakes in there, hopefully they just keep coming down as fast as they rise, as we see it. But I don't think that Christianity is going anywhere. I don't think so in Africa. I just think it's just going to keep multiplying and just going the way it's going, right? But if you have any questions or anything to add to what I've said, please feel free. There might be something I've said which is wrong, or I've missaid it, or I'm not just aware of it, and you want to shed more light on it. Please let me know, because from this conversation, this was like a push button, because from this conversation, people had a lot of questions which we can't answer in just one episode, and it nursed I have about 4 or 5 other topics that came out from just this topic alone. So if you have anything to offer, please let us know. DM, email, comment, however you want to send that information to us. Please go ahead, feel free. And again, thank you so much, Ben Collins, for suggesting the topic. It was enriching. The conversations I had were amazing. Thank you for everybody who commented. If you realize, I incorporated it in the discuss. I looked into it and I realized that we all had a similar approach to the topic. So I will see you guys next week for yet another episode. Thank you.
Thank you for listening, and hope you join me for the next episode. You can always reach us via email at africanteapot@gmail.com and follow us on Instagram at African_teapot.